Hello, Connie Betz. Why is this year's retrospective director at the Berlinale King Vidor?
Because we haven't dedicated a retrospective to a director for many, many years. And when Carlo Chatrian became the new artistic director of the Berlin International Film Festival, and we were discussing with him what we would like to present, somehow immediately we all had the idea to dedicate it to King Vidor.
Okay. And what was cinema like when King Vidor was born?
He was actually more or less, he grew up with cinema. As early as in 1913, he started to work at the cinema in the town where he was born, Galveston, Texas. And he started projecting films, selling tickets, and so he really made all his way up through the American film industry growing in the 1910s and 20s.
And I thought it was kind of interesting. He was born in the year where cinema was born.
Yes, that's
kind of a fun fact.
Yeah. And since he continued to make feature films until 1959, his career spanned not only the early years but also the classical Hollywood cinema period. And it's really like, for us, it was like going through American film history, following his path and his work.
Yeah. Okay. So, were there, since I imagine, seen many of his films, did you find reoccurring storylines in his body of work?
Yes, there are. Like, war is a recurring theme. Like, it starts with the Civil War in some of his films. For example, like in So Red the Rose, a rather unknown film and the predecessor of the very famous Gone with the Wind, with a similar setting also, but the film never became so famous. And then there is, of course, the film which made him very well known all over the world, The Big Parade, focusing on the First World War. And then also there are, in his later films, you can find traces of war, like in Japanese War Bride, an American soldier who was in the Korea War brought his Japanese war bride back to his hometown, and so that's something which really interested him for a long time. And there were other themes like equality in society, and like his approach to women is also very interesting. He has many main actresses which are very strong personalities, and they have unusual lives and careers also.
Oh, okay. So it's viewed sort of in Hollywood as a slight to get the honorary Oscar. So why do you think he never got like a Best Picture Oscar?
Yeah, that's it's not so easy to say, because many of his films like Duel in the Sun, The Big Parade, they're fantastic. I think they would have earned an Oscar, but probably there were other strong films in competition that years. But also sometimes you think that the films are a bit too detailed or too
intellectual, maybe? Or,
yes. I would say probably that's a reason, but basically we do not understand why he never received an Oscar for some of his masterpieces.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so what do you think about his adaptation of War and Peace?
It's definitely not as strong and convincing as Bondarchuk's adaptation, but nevertheless we wanted to show it because it's a splendid Technicolor film. It's incredibly beautiful on the big screen. We're very happy to show an original dye transfer Technicolor print, and it's like, I mean, Audrey Hepburn, she's so charming, and then Henry Fonda, it's probably not the best role in his career, but still it's, I think it's a film that one should see, that one should be aware of, and it's in a way it's a very interesting adaptation that he's doing on this very famous book by Tolstoy. So yeah, I mean, it's the film is there, and these films that he made in the late 50s, they're in a way quite different from his earlier work anyway. It's difficult. Also, Solomon and Sheba.
Right.
You could hardly compare them to the films that he did before.
Okay, so War and Peace was also shot by Jack Cardiff, right?
Yes.
The great Jack Cardiff, who did Powell and Pressburger Productions.
Yeah.
So obviously he's a great framer. And
it's visually it's one of his best films, I would say. Also in terms of colors and everything, it's really wonderful to see it.
Yes, absolutely. And Solomon and Sheba, that was one of kind of like the biblical movies were a big thing.
Yes.
Like Land of the Pharaohs or the Ten Commandments.
Yes, like really an epic story. And also, again, Technicolor. It's very interesting to see that he always chose Technicolor for his color films. He made 6 of them in his career. And so it's really sort of overwhelming to see them with all their splendid colors and hues and shades. And I find them visually a great experience.
In the time of the 50s, Technicolor was like a big event.
Yes, it was. And also the way, War and Peace, they had this roadshow version, starting with an overture, the intermission, and then the exit music. So it was really like, you would spend time with something big on the screen at the theater at that time.
I'm not sure if this happened in Europe, but in North America, there was a road show for the Hateful Eight. Did that happen in Europe? Because
not as much. But today, whenever we can for our film historical program, we try to show a roadshow version.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, to give the audience
of
this
what it was like.
experience. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's great because film prints are so rare these days. Screenings of them. Yeah. So it's always a big treat when you can see a print.
Yes.
Unfortunately, a lot of people can't even tell the difference, but it is good stuff. I like that sort of stuff. So did King Vidor, because you've seen more of his movies than I have, did he make a more sexually charged movie than Duel in the Sun?
That's probably the most charged one, but there are others, like his first sound film, Hallelujah, which is also very interesting in terms of sexuality. There, he's connecting sexuality with religion.
Oh my God!
Which is also it's really great how he's doing that. It was an early sound film, so like through the sounds that you can hear people being in their religious ceremonies, and it's somehow he gets very close to sexual encounters between people. So that was very fascinating. And what I think is really interesting, he always has a woman, or often has a woman, seducing a man in his films. That's one of the recurring themes that you can find.
Interesting.
Often a bad girl trying to seduce the hero.
Sort of the male gaze, I suppose.
Yes.
So, can you explain Duel in the Sun for people who haven't seen it? It's basically just Gregory Peck, coming back and forth with one woman and killing all her partners, and then they have a big dramatic shootout, and the use of red is pretty incredible, right? Yeah,
it's Jennifer Jones. She has a very interesting role, playing a half-blood, and her mother is this incredible Indian dancer at sort of a nightclub, and so she has, in a way, to go through all this racist treatment that they were having at this time, and then torn in between the two brothers. It's a very compelling story.
There's a lot of melodrama going on.
Yes, there is. Melodrama is one of his favorite genres.
Melodrama is great.
It is.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I also know that originally Daryl Zanuck, who produced Duel in the Sun, envisioned it as he was going to top Gone with the Wind with it.
Okay. Yeah.
He didn't quite do that, but maybe in a way he did. All right, so Solomon and Sheba came out during that period, like we said, where there were many biblical films. Is this one different in any ways? How does Vidor distinguish himself from his peers within this genre? Or Psycho?
I would say not so much. It's a very strong film in terms of the actors again.
Yeah.
That was one of his strengths, that he had really he was very good in leading actors. And it's again in terms of places where he shoot the film, it's incredible landscapes. So you really experience this biblical atmosphere, and also in terms of sexuality again. There you have, Gina Lollobrigida. She seems just to be burst out of sexual desire in some of the scenes. So it's again, this is a topic that you can find in so many films.
Ah, great. So, how do you describe his visual style?
Like, for example, in Solomon and Sheba, in the scene where Gina Lollobrigida wants to seduce, you say Brynner, yes, Yul Brynner.
That's what I was going to guess. Okay.
Yeah, so she's on lying on a white, very soft sort of carpet, and then there are curtains all around her. So when she starts to seduce him, one curtain after the other is closing this love scene, so we see less and less of them, and so I think that's a brilliant idea. To first she's seducing him, but also the audience, and then they slowly close with the curtains and make it very mystic, also in a way, what happens behind the curtains.
That's pretty interesting and visually creative, inventive, and sort of characteristic of the time where, obviously we have a lot more explicit sexuality in films these days.
Yes, and
they're a bit more traditional about things like that back then.
What is very interesting in his earlier films, especially in the 20s and 30s, is the documentary style he uses in many feature films.
Oh, wow.
Like, you see an incredible amount of work in his films. Like, it starts in the cotton fields in Hallelujah and So Red the Rose, where you see the black slaves working, but then also later on work in factories, like, for example, the great film American Romance, one of his big Technicolor epics as well, shows an immigrant arriving from Europe in the US, and he's making all his way up, and so he works in the steel industry in all these places, and you can really get an experience of what it meant in these years, in the 30s and 40s, to work in a factory. And also in some other films, he shoots often on location, which gives the film an authentic touch.
All right, so there's, I believe I read in the book, in the pamphlet, that there is a big restoration effort for King Vidor coming out. So I guess a lot of these movies will be coming out on home video in the year 2020 and 2021.
Well, a lot of them are already out in the home video sector, but they're no longer. It's no longer easy to show them on the big screen. So that's why we initiated some restorations. For example, the Library of Congress restored his first Western, The Sky Pilot, and a really important film, Hallelujah, his first sound film, is being restored this year by the Library of Congress, but it could not yet be ready for our program. So,
that's okay.
But
we get the prints.
Yes. But they, today everything is being restored digitally, of course, so they will no longer print the films out.
And who are some of his big fans?
Some of his big fans, I think the biggest one is Martin Scorsese, who also wrote a short essay for our publication the retrospective. Yes,
that's pretty cool.
Really cool.
Yeah.
And his famous, the film, King Vidor film that he likes most is Duel in the Sun.
Yeah.
Interesting to know. But he had also many successors until today who adore him, and many journalists which are visiting the retrospective program. They all adore King Vidor and come to see his movies. So I think he had a huge impact also on films like Bicycle Thieves, with his documentary style. So he inspired many of the
Italian neorealist movies.
Yes,
And
because
you
you can find in his films of the 30s.
That's cool. And I know, well, you know, it's very clear the use of the color red is all over Duel in the Sun. And you can see that in Mean Streets as well, certainly. All right. So, Connie Betz, thank you very much for your time. Do you have any final thoughts on King Vidor before we wrap this?
I think definitely it's a director that should be more well known, because you can go through American history watching his films, through all the important, like through the New Deal, through World War II, through everything.
Yeah.
So I think it really enriches your knowledge about what has happened in the US in those years, and also like the ordinary people lived in those days.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.